Okay, hello, this is Chris Park from Arkin Games. I'm speaking kind of softly because it's late at night, and everybody else in the house is asleep. But at any rate, there's a lot of stuff I'm going to show in this particular video, and rather than just trying to write that all out in the video description, I figured that I would actually talk over this one, which some people have been asking me to do in the Scourge ones. So at any rate, this is about the Fallen Spire in AI War 2 coming up in our the Spire Rises DLC, which is coming out next week. So what you're looking at right now, these are three things which are called Spire Debris, and these get spawned at these get dropped rather at various points after relic chases and a few other things. Not showing the relics themselves in this particular video because there's another video with those. These are all functionally identical, but just made a few versions that would look different. I kind of like the really dark swirls and stuff in here if you get zoomed in. This gets a little bit circusy just because of how much stuff is all in one area. Incidentally, I'm using a 3D mouse, which is how I'm able to move the cursor around like this. And without going salesy on you, this is the sort of thing that I don't think I could do this sort of work if I didn't have a 3D mouse. My left hand operates that, and then my right hand regular mouse, and oh my goodness, saves so much time. So these are the so with the Fallen Spire, you can build your own cities. There's also things that you can find. There's relics that you can find that the AI have. Those are in a different video. There's some facilities that the AI have that you can go and bust up or rob a train or whatever to get a relic. Then you build your own city and you start from there. Inside your city, you have various buildings. In the first game, we had like 4 building types only. That was about it. I don't know, 6, something like that. Not very many. In the sequel, we have way more building types. 12, 16, I don't even know. Some of them are variants, but they're a lot more interesting. And one of the big challenges that I had was that the Spire used to be all white, and that was about it. Originally, the first Spire I had created were done in ZBrush, and then I just used the little ZBrush kind of basic tool for setting those, like doing kind of prototyping, and those happen to be black spheres. And then I inverted it in Photoshop afterwards and made it white, and did some little post-processing with like Gaussian blur and stuff. In this game, we needed something more interesting than just white, because when you've got one color, period, no matter what the color is, white is bad enough, but even if it was a more interesting color, all you have to work with is shape then, and that's just not enough. I needed details, and shape is certainly important. I spent a lot of time trying to find and assemble, the ideal sort of shapes. My daughter always was like, "Can we go in the ship? Can we see what's inside?" So it's the sort of thing that she helps out with a lot of these sometimes. This is the Spire Fortress. It's one of the buildings that you can construct in your city if you have a city that's high enough level and you have city sockets free and you're wealthy enough. This is a lesser fortress. This is a great fortress. These are not to scale. This is in this is in the game engine. This is the proper lighting, all the good stuff. This is not in the actual quote unquote game, however. So the actual scale of things and the placement of things is just like my working environment. If you're a fan of the Matrix, think of their kind of loading construct. It's a lot like that. It is the Matrix, but it's also kind of not. So this is just my little workshop. At any rate, things are not to scale. Puffin gets that all to scale properly as he integrates these into the actual game via the XML and as he's implementing them. These are very shiny because they're fortresses. So let's move on. This is the shipyard. Basically think, so in order to build any ships for your non-Spire fleets, you need a factory, what used to be called a space dock. With your Spire fleets, you need a very specific kind, which is the Spire Shipyard. It will build for any of your Spire fleets, but only for Spire fleets. And the more of these you have, or if you have them assisted by engineers at the moment, they get faster. This is kind of the default white material for Spire. I thought that since this shipyard is such a basic, all the time around unit, that it would be nice to use the basic white. It's fun anyway because there's some motion in there. I've stopped moving the camera. You can see that there's some motion in there. Some of them have a lot more motion than others. But the basic white is pretty tame. Compared to the last time I did a video of any of the Spire stuff, I have redone this some. My daughter was noticing leaves on the trees. She has a really good eye for stuff like that. Now it's all patterned out, and you can't see anything that would be indicative of the original HDRI cube map that's there. Instead, it has this very cool, almost kind of reptilian circular pattern look. I did that with a Filter Forge 8 filter. So anyway, that's the shipyard. The engineering center is this guy. This one has a much more fast-moving pattern. All the Spire ships use the same basic Spire shader. Well, there's a couple of them, one that rotates, one that doesn't. But other than that, they're the same. But these different cube maps and different variables on the ships, that's the structures you're looking at. We've actually looked at some of the blander units so far, but they're still cool. This one, the engineering center pretty much just lets you build some of the more advanced ships. It doesn't really serve much of a purpose except that it takes up one of your city sockets and then lets you build some awesome other stuff, and you just pay for it to begin with. So it's kind of a gateway unit. This is the Spire mining facility, and so this one grabbed onto a big asteroid, and for fun / consistency, this is the exact same asteroid that is used in the normal metal harvester. So that's, I mean, I don't know. I thought that was kind of a neat. First I was going to do another asteroid, and I was like, why not just have it be the same? So we've got the Spire kind of octopus tentacling onto this instead. So this will generate a bunch of metal for you if you want to devote your city sockets to that. Each city, depending on how much you've leveled it up, can only do but so many things. So what is it going to be? Are you going to make your fleet bigger? You're going to have some big weapons, big shield, generate some metal, generate some energy, etc. You can't over-specialize your cities to past a certain extent, because some things cost a whole lot. And I mean by a whole lot, I mean like 2 million or 1 million, depending, energy. And so these Spire Shard reactors, these generate 2 million energy each, and sometimes you need one of these just to power a really big and powerful other ship. Now, I do have some feedback that from some of the earliest testers, that some of the really late stage Spire units just really aren't worth it at the moment, because they take up too many sockets, or they take too much energy, which in turn, I mean, takes too much metal to originally construct them, although that hasn't really come up. And so I think I'm going to be adding a couple more sockets than have been here traditionally, and maybe making a few fewer things take an entire shard reactor to run them. But for a lot of the really big, really cool late game Spire buildings, those are ones that certainly need kind of a dedicated shard reactor in their same city even to run it. So we'll see. I'm really pleased with this. The old shard reactor that I'd been using for a while was triangular, and it looked just bad. I really like how organic and spherical and kind of water drop-ishy this is now, and especially when you get things like that kind of flowing texture on there. That's just really neat. So you can build a bunch of Spire Cities. The very first one that you build, wherever it is you put it, doesn't matter. That one will be that will have a galactic capital, and that's what this is. Again, these are not to proper scale, but this is a very large, very tall unit, and these are kind of fascinating because these are HRI cube maps in and of themselves. They almost are like little portals to alien worlds, just like it's like you can kind of see into them. At any rate, so on your planets, you need to have a command station. You also need to have a city center, and on your first city, that would be the galactic capital, which is what you're seeing here. On every city after that, which you can have up to 13 in order to get a level 7 city, I want to say, or is it 9? In order to win the game, I think, like via the alternate victory condition, you would need to have 9 cities, I think it is, to go like totally crazy and like world domination sort of thing. You would need 13. But at any rate, on all of them beyond the first, this is the city hub. I had a really different graphic for this for the longest while. I got really tired of what the two of these looked like. It was kind of messy, a little crab-like. I wanted something more elegant. A lot of smooth curves, that sort of thing. Moving on, there's a Spire Great Shield, and this is the generator for that. I love the motion on this. Not only is there this really cool flowing motion on the thing itself, but then obviously it's turning as well. I tried to make these things turn at different rates and in different directions and so forth, and I actually can do it. It's not that hard, but because of the thickness of the rings, what winds up happening is you can't see the center ever. They wind up spinning in such a way that they're like always creating this like pretty complete shell, because something is always blocking your view through. And you get occasional glimpses, but for the most part, it feels like you can't see the center ever. And that just felt off. So I went with this instead. Let's see. This is one of those advanced structures we were talking about. Players were saying this is not valuable enough yet. This is the lesser Spy Cradle, and I love the visuals on this, the motion of it. Still pictures just don't do it justice. That pulsing upwards and everything. So basically, if you've got a logistical command station, then normally that lets you see like some of the adjacent planets and stuff, right? This lets you see even further out. Right now, lets you see within 2 hops. People are saying that's not quite worth it for what it costs. It may make it cheaper, or may make it better. Not sure. This is the the greater Spy Cradle, and this one currently lets you see out to 3 hops. And by see, I mean have full spy intel all the time. This is a later city sort of thing, and the sort of thing you'd set up in a city that's in the middle of the map and suddenly be able to see a ton of the map, like watch a bunch of the map. And so it's hard for the enemy to hide from you when you do this, which is really cool. I'm informed it's a little on the pricey side right now in terms of sockets and energy. So maybe we will be increasing the number of sockets just to let you have a little more flexibility in the late stage cities, or maybe it'll get a little bit cheaper. Maybe it'll get a little bit better as well. I don't know. It's hard to say. Balance on that is tricky, and we just need more players than we've had, which is fine. We've kept it small on purpose because we've been trying to verify functionality more than, full balance for everybody. But yeah, so I'm going to start with this one. This is, and when I get to the neural nets, so this is a Spire frigate neural net. So the frigates are the smallest of the Spire ships, and you start out with a cruiser as your flagship for your fleet, and then you have nothing else in there. It's just a cruiser that wanders around by itself. As you level up your city, you gain access to more things. I really enjoy going in this one because here's some actual neurons, which is fun. And you can clip in like this in the game as well, which is part of the fun. But and you can look through the holes. But at any rate, the only other way to get some more ships is to build the neural nets to support them, and then based on having neural nets, that increases your capacity, and then you're using your shipyard, it actually constructs them. And so this would let you get, I think it's 2 frigates now. And so there's that. For destroyers, this gives you 1 destroyer. So it goes frigate, destroyer, cruiser, battleship, and then dreadnought. Battleships and dreadnoughts you can only get by having really high level cities. I really enjoy the motion of these. This is a Mobius, is that how you say that, strip, as well as having some literal modeled neurons in there. This one's very open, the other one's very closed. These are the 2 brightest colored things that we have. This is a neat thing. This is the let's see, what is this thing called? The Spire Buttress. And notice how it deforms as it turns. It's so funky. I love that. It's actually a bug in my math, in my rotational code, that when I have it rotating on more than one axis, then it deforms. But the effect is so cool that I never bothered to fix that bug. And normally things only rotate on one axis anyway. When I have this is shader code, so it's on the GPU rotating. This is not in, your CPU doesn't know about it. And so this is vertex animation, essentially. And I just find it really fun. But anyway, as long as this thing is alive, then some certain other buildings of yours, I think it's whatever your city center is, are invincible. This is a very late game sort of a thing. And I love the idea of this kind of ring of power that's kind of deforming, and it's another Mobius strip, actually. And it's knurled. It is this powerful thing that the AI has to, or whatever other enemies have to knock out before they can get at you more. This thing here is like an ultimate late game bit. And this is called the Spire transceiver. And I went with the basic Spire coloring with this. Partly because it's just so, well, for one thing, it looks really cool as it is with that. It looks, as Badger pointed out, kind of like a snake skeleton. It also looks like a harp. It also looks like something alien. But this is essentially a communication device that you can construct once you have an appropriate level city to contact help. It leads into the alternate victory condition. If you played the Fallen Spire in the first AI War, you have a pretty good idea of what happens after this, although it's hopefully more dramatic nowadays. But anyway, this is one of my favorite pieces, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with it at first. If I was trying to kind of allocate specific pieces to specific functions, and that is tricky when a lot of it's very abstract. And but it quickly became apparent that making this the transceiver was a way to go, because it feels like it's tiny in here. This is my scrap workshop, but it feels like a real, victorious thing to construct, which is neat. So what else we have here? Buildings wise, that may be it for the buildings that you construct in your cities. Constructing the cities is one thing. Then you start actually having your fleet. So I've talked about these already. You may notice these as being, except for the dreadnought at the end, all of these were used as the Dyson bastion, bulwark, defender, etc., but with very different coloring in earlier versions of the game. That was a just error on my part. The Dyson sphere is a zenith unit. It always has been. And for some reason, I gave it Spire guards, which makes no sense. All I can say is I was just very tired or something, and I just then never noticed the error. Nobody ever pointed it out to me, and I was working on the Spire this time. I was like, hey, wait a minute. Why don't I have all these extra Spire for this Zenith thing? So that was a mess. So I recreated the Bulwark, Defender, Sentinel, all that stuff in a Zenith style. And I really love these ships, though, so these made sense to pull in and use for this expansion instead. But they got a facelift like everything did. They're no longer just... I was trying to do subsurface scattering and glowing off of it, and it was successful. I did do that. But it often, from a distance in particular, looked untextured, versus from a distance, these look pretty darn cool. This is the most boring one, being, small and the most white. So like I said, that's the frigate. This is the destroyer. The destroyer is a notable jump up, and jumps up in color and everything else, and they've all got that little motion to them. And then this here is the cruiser. So when you first start out, your first flagship for a given city is a cruiser. As your city levels up, your cruiser eventually becomes this, which is a battleship. Once it becomes a battleship, your flagship becomes a battleship. You get a free cruiser that starts hanging out, and every level your city goes up after that, you get another cruiser. So that's how you start getting a bunch of cruisers. It's the only way to get cruisers, incidentally. Then, once you hit city level 6, you get this bad boy, which is the dreadnought. So this is like a really souped up and even larger version of the battleship. Once you get a dreadnought at level 6, city level 6, as your flagship, then you start getting you get a battleship as your secondary. And I can't remember if I did this or not, but you might get a secondary dreadnought at level 7 in addition to the one that's your flagship. Maybe not, I don't remember. There are ways to have more than one dreadnought in the city, or in the game, and certainly but I'm not sure if more than one per fleet of your own is possible. Okay, this is actually the last of the city buildings. I forgot about that. This one is the what is this called? This is called the plasma driver. We had the suggestion from somebody to say, let's do I think it was Democracy. It was either that or Zeus. They both made so many good suggestions that I keep mixing up who said what on there, and don't want to offend anybody, but it's one of those two. Those guys have been really good. At any rate, they were like, hey, how about we have a mass driver that is, Spire themed? And I thought, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then I think it was Puffin was like, well, cool, mass drivers, chucking a rock, but Spire have only ever really used plasma and beam weapons ever before. It's a little bit out of character for them. So, all right, how about a plasma driver that chucks plasma? Same kind of premise as a mass driver, vaguely. But for some reason, the Spire prefer to use plasma because they're inscrutable alien ways. It's going to make this the front of the ship, the front of the driver originally. It looks so cool in there. But just didn't feel right. I did make the curve of the kind of Tesla animation so that it, comes up here in the front primarily. It's driving forward so you can tell which way the front is, the tip here. I tried reversing it and tried different proportions of these things and just never felt right. So it's like, well, this looks like the aperture of a plasma cannon, but in the end, this looks like the tip of a Tesla coil. So I guess that's what we're doing. Not that plasma comes out of a Tesla coil, but this is where we are. I'm going to jump way over here. Okay. So these are not things that you get to build. They're not things that are part of your city at all. These are things that you can destroy other than the relic train, which is kind of astro train that wanders around even if you don't have astro trains on when you have the fallen spire on. So you can get the relics by either just like finding the relic directly or searching for the relic. Those two ways, robbing the train, or this thing right here. This is the research station. And I love how blocky this is. I don't know. I find this really fun. So you got the AI portion here, which is very AI-ish, and it's just like bisecting essentially this weirdly cuboid anyway, spire thing. Instead of being all organic and smooth and whatnot, you've got this spire thing which has been like almost kind of violently chopped up into cubes. It's like I find it pretty, but if you think about it too much, it's a little bit grotesque in some ways, and I find that very fitting for the AI. So I don't know, I really like that. So this is the AI, seeing what they can learn, and they've crunched up some spire matter of some sort into a little chunk of stuff, and they've inserted their own chunk of machinery into it, and they're checking it out. We have over here, this is again not to scale. These things are the wrong scale relative to one another. This is a AI Citadel in general, but it also has this spire thing embedded in the middle of it. And so this is an AI Spire Citadel instead of just an AI Citadel. And this is basically the AI has taken what was already formidable as a Citadel, and they have embedded some Spire technology in it. They haven't crunched it into cubes this time, but they've kind of, some vague, it's got those extra sharp points and stuff, which is usually more AI-ish. And especially with the Scourge subfaction of AI. And you can even see some of the like patterns and stuff on it are bigger and broader. It's almost like it's uncomfortable and it's large, and it's lost some of its personality, lost some of its detail. Instead, it's kind of shouting, as it were, if the little motions on the sides are speech. Anyway, So this is a really strong AI unit that you can go and attack, and if you defeat it, then you can get a relic out of there and build the start of a new city there. I put it very far away because it's so freaking huge. Jumping back over in this area, I mean, see more of this, see this stuff again, and I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. I look forward to seeing what people's cities look like when this stuff is to scale. In particular, it'd be really neat to see people placing these things around the fortresses and the mining and the energy shard reactors and all that sort of stuff. So, very long-winded video, but there's a lot of pieces in here. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. This is coming up in the next week where everybody's gonna be able to play it, so really excited to see how things get going as more people are getting involved. Thanks for watching. Bye.